and get your questions in as well. So Kristen Cole.
Thanks, Allison. I'm going to put the mic right up in my mouth, so hopefully that will help. Is that better? All right. Okay, so first of all, this is our first expansion panel. How many of you were in Gary's session? Right? Did you hear about him talking about the 20%? Did you hear him say that it's about the basics? Guess what? Expansion is a sexy name about the basics. So the great thing about the panelists today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a second, is that they really are from expansion folks who have started expanding since day one, before we even had a model, to an agent who started expanding this year. So you're going to hear the whole gambit, and we're going to leave time at the end for questions. So we're going to leave 15 minutes at the end for any questions. So jot down questions that you might have, and we'll get to them, as many of them as we can, okay? All right, so let's get started. So what I'm going to have the panelists do is introduce who they are, where their home hub is located. So the hub means, you know, their engine of their expansion. So where are they actually located? Where do they start from? Where was their original expansion starting from? And then what other locations are they in? And just a little bit about themselves. So we're going to start with Ryan Tollefson from Alaska. So Ryan, tell them who you are and a little bit about your team.
Okay. Ryan Tollefson, Unity Home Group up in Anchorage, Alaska. We started that team probably about 2011 when we came to Keller Williams. That's our main hub. Our first expansion, even though we didn't really know it was an expansion, was in Wasilla, Alaska, which is where Kristen's located. And we just kind of called that spillover. And then we got purposeful. We went to Scottsdale, expanded the team there, did a team in Spokane, Washington, then one in Birmingham, Alabama, and now we're launching in Portland, Oregon.
So I have to stop him a second. Did you hear what he said? We just kind of called it spillover. Well, what Gary will tell you is the natural, organic flow of business. That expansion is exactly that. It's just the natural, organic flow of business. So what we're going to talk about today is business conversations. So I want you to get to thinking about, well, what could this do for my business? And stop thinking about it in terms of just team. Because once you go beyond one location, you're building a big business. So, yes.
One thing we actually did was this last year, we took our spillover Wasilla and actually made that a team separated from our main hub so we can track profit and loss on it, and that was huge. It made a big difference for just knowing where we were at.
So Adelina is actually, I'll let her tell you where she's from and where she lives now, but she's an expansion director for the Ben Kenny companies. So go ahead and tell us about your success and about who you are.
Sure. So I'm Adelina. I'm with the Ben Kenny companies. And Ben and I are business partners. We launched our first out-of-state location in Austin, Texas last year, and we closed the 100 units in our first 11 months there. So that was really exciting, and look forward to sharing about that. And let's see, last year, this time we had 0 pendings, 0 closings, and so far this year we have 52 sold.
So what I want you to know is Ben didn't start expanding and go to Austin, Texas first. Ben started expanding 5 years ago, and he expanded right in Washington, going down the I-5 corridor. And only when he had expanded successfully and profitably and had actually gone into the other market centers and he wanted to continue to grow did he ever step outside of the state of Washington. So I want you to hear that. Expand locally first is where you're going to be the most profitable and have the least amount of complexity. So Ben did it right. And then I'm going to introduce you to our next panelist, who is Jason Abrams. Jason and his business partner Brian started expanding in 2011, and so I'll let him tell you a little bit about their journey.
Yeah, but first, who has 50 deals pending? Raise your hand. She does in her first year in the market she's in. I just think that's the most amazing thing. And absolutely blows me away. So I'm Jason Abrams, and we have went out of business in Denver and a couple of times in San Diego. But what we've done well has been in Portland and in Scottsdale and in Tucson and in Oakland County, Michigan, and in Bellevue, Washington. We run a standard expansion model. We're hovering around the 400 transaction mark. And I think truthfully there's far more to be learned in our failures than there is in our successes. And I think that if I'm giving the audience any advice, when you ask questions, that's what we should talk about.
Absolutely. And then David is the youngest member of our group today because David only joined Keller Williams 2 years ago. And David started expanding in March of this year, having never expanded before. And he did all of his expansion super hyper local right there in New Jersey. So David and I started coaching in March of this year. And so now tell them kind of where you are a short 11 months later.
Okay, so our hub is located in Hoboken, New Jersey, and we have 6 other expansion teams in New Jersey, and I'm told we just officially launched our first team in New York, which is in Brooklyn.
Which is just across the tunnel.
Yes, that's right there, yeah. So all of our teams are within 65 miles. One of them is a quarter mile from our hub.
Awesome. So the first question I'm going to ask them about is lead generation. Is that something you guys would like to know about? Okay. So with your goals in 2016 and what that prepared you all for in 2017, tell us what that looked like. Tell us what 2016 looked like, and then tell us how that has prepared you and launched you into 2017.
For us, 2016 was 237 transactions. And then 2017 is going to be 505 transactions.
Now, my first question to David when he told me that was, that's double. How are you going to get from here to there in that short amount of time? And your answer was?
So we already know how we're going to get there. In 2016, it was a really building phase for us. So we added five of the expansion teams in September and October. So we were working on that throughout the fourth quarter, and now we're starting to see the production. We have 90 closed and pending right now. So we're starting to see the production come from those teams that we opened in September and October. So that prepared us for growth next year, was all of the building and investing that we did last year into the company. The challenge this year will be to, what we're working on right now is looking out for everything that's going to break down when we go that heavy into production, and putting the right pieces into place ahead of time so that when they do break down, we can have a breakthrough with it, move forward, and the wheels don't come off.
Well, and what Gary would say is you are going to have breakdowns, and when you do, just fix it fast. Fix it fast. Fail fast and fix it fast. And with each one of these, I know their businesses pretty well, and I want to tell you where they've really done it right. And one thing that David did right, in my view, is one, he came to ESO, Expansion Systems Orientation, not once, not twice, but 3 times four times, just in 2016, to learn how to do it better and better and better. The second thing that David did that was really right is he hired his expansion director or his sales director first, so that he has someone leading and holding the people accountable. And you'll hear Jason talk a lot about that too. So he said a couple key things, that he got everything in place. He didn't just run off and expand and then fix all the mess. He got his hub in place, he got his key hires in place, and then he started expanding. And one of them, like he said, was just a quarter of a mile away. So, all right, Jason, tell us about 16, what it looked like, what you guys are going to be doing in 17, and how you're going to get there.
Well, let's talk about lead generation, because that's the lever that drives everybody. So we break ours into 2 categories, agent-driven lead gen and hub-driven lead gen. We think it's a symbiotic relationship. If the agent is just sitting there waiting for the hub to produce 100% of the leads, well, it makes it hard to sleep at night if you're in the hub. So let's work on this thing together. And it's kind of Ben's model too, right? So we're watching dialing every day, 120 minutes. All of our agents are doing that. 1 open house a week. We think that that's vital. And then we put their sphere of influence into our system. Our hub does about 70% of the contacts to the sphere of influence, handwritten notes, emails, videos, all that stuff. And then the personal contacts the agent makes. Because it'd be weird, like if I called your cousin, it was like we should hang out. It's awkward for him. So we don't do that. We then have the hub side where we're doing pay-per-click leads, sign calls, radio stuff, everything that the agent is not involved in. Then all of our agents have a lead day, kind of like old school floor time used to be, where they get 100% of the leads that we generate that day. That's going to be anywhere from 15 to 25 leads a day. They're then going to follow up, contact, and then we're going to provide, by holding them accountable, an amazing system to make sure that no leads slip through the crack.
Well, let me ask you a question, though. That just doesn't happen. I mean, so is there somebody in charge of holding them accountable and training them?
Yeah, so we do that a couple of different ways. We have one trainer who's dedicated to every agent that joins first 3 deals. His name is Daniel, and he's great, and you get him. That's after you've been onboarded and you went through a 2-week, 10-day process of watching amazing videos. I'm in all of them. They're great. They're like 20 minutes a piece with then an assessment at the end, and then that assessment is graded, and that's how they move through each of the sections until they get to the end, when then they do a live listing presentation, and we grade it, and when it gets good, then hilarity ensues, and then they hit the phone. On a daily basis, we're monitoring through Boomtown, making sure that everybody is getting contacted. If there's not a to-do, then there's a whole list of emails that goes out. And truthfully, the accountability comes from the hub. We're checking it every day. We're auditing our agents' Boomtown accounts every single day. And we're sending out emails every day. We also do a phone call every single day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is a scripts, dialogue, and motivational phone call. So after your normal amount of willpower gets you into the office, gets you to do your 120 minutes, right around the time that you've had lunch and you start thinking about going to the gym or doing something else for a living, that's when we have a phone call with you and breathe life back into the organization to make sure that the afternoon is as powerful as the morning.
Awesome, awesome. So let's, Adelina, tell us what your lead generation looks like as well. Because I want you guys to hear there's no magic bullet. There is nothing different about expansion in terms of lead generation, in that it really comes down to 3 things. Who are you going to call, what are you going to say, and how are you going to follow up? And making sure that we're holding them accountable to that. So go ahead.
I was going to say exactly that. I was like, Kristen, that's exactly what we do. So we just walked out of Gary's panel, and he said that if you want to get to the next level, just double down on the basics. And nothing we do on the Bankini team is sexy. It is all basics. So all of our agents dial 150 people a day. We use a circle prospecting script. Our agents do 2 open houses a week. And all of our agents, when they come onto our team, they bring in 100 people to their sphere, and they need to get it to 200 as soon as possible. And really, we did a lot of deals last year, but I think what's impressive is what works in one market absolutely does work in the other market. What we found is in Austin, we just have to be doing a lot more activities.
And tell them why that is.
Okay.
Tell them how you figured that out.
So it's interesting because Ben shared on stage, we hardly had any sales in the first 6 months. We talk about the hockey stick effect, right? 14 of our deals came in the first 6 months of the year, 86 came in the last half of the year. What we realized really quickly was there are 2 million people in Austin and 14,000 agents. In Seattle, there's 14,000 agents and 4 million people. So there's such an agent saturation in Austin, and the skill level was so good. And so we were recruiting brand new agents. So what we learned is for us to be competitive and to actually win in that market, we had to do 3 times the amount of calls, 3 times the amount of activities that anyone else had to do.
And that comes back to knowing your numbers. And I hope you guys heard that, because if you're not getting the results you want, it's either A, you need more at-bats, or B, you need better scripts to convert with. So they realize to be competitive, they might have to do 3 times as many phone calls. But when they made that shift, which was about 90, 120 days in,
it was April 15th, actually.
Okay, there you go. Then the second half of the year, the results were completely different. So I'd be asking yourself, if you're not getting the results you want, you might have to change it up. You might have to do more than someone else. Okay, so Ryan, tell us what you guys are doing in terms of lead generation that works.
Internet.
Come on, Ryan.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so we focus mainly on internet. Our business is a little bit different than most teams out there. You look at the makeup of our team, our transaction sides, about 71% last year were on the buyer side, and the seller side is slowly catching up. When we first, like 2012, I think we did 56 million, 2013 it was 92, and we were like 80+% on the buyer side, but as our business matures and develops, a lot of those buyers become sellers. A lot of those buyers refer us sellers, or friends or family, and so Sorry. So internet's been great. Internet drives buyers predominantly, which has been a challenge. I felt like my model was wrong and I was doing it wrong because of that. The plus side is we've built a massive database out of that, and now I know we can go back and we can work that database to get the results we want, to find those sellers, to get those referrals. And one of the things we've been focusing a lot last year, and we're taking into this year, is structure for accountability and putting training in our team. We've hired a productivity manager who works with our team members and helps get them up to speed, lets them know what they're doing, sits there and makes phone calls with them, does daily scripting with them, monitors their time blocks, does the accountability meetings, does our team meetings, and that's been very instrumental in growing our business from where we're at.
So I hope you heard what Ryan said, because as my good friend Tim Heil says, your business is your database and your database is your business. So you heard all of them talk about 4 key things. 1, does everybody lead generate? Say yes. Yes, everyone's lead generating, and they might have a different lever, but they're using all the basic levers that we talk about that work in any market. Number 2, you heard them all talk about training. Can you expect your people to hit home runs if they haven't been trained and understand how to convert a lead to an actual appointment? So you've got to train them. Then you also heard them talk about accountability, daily accountability. So, and all of them have that measure that they're looking at, that dashboard, and they also have it, you know, so that everyone else could see it as well. So everyone is seeing the same thing. So I hope you heard them, you know, the lead generation, the training, the accountability, and the database. Because we're looking for now business, and then we're also looking at maturing that database. Okay, so describe, you know, when you talk about lead generation systems and launching into a new location, how did your systems evolve that allowed you to launch into another location with a predictable lead generation lever? What does that look like, and how did you actually implement it?
Well, we implemented that a few times and it was wrong. So I think we've got it right. We're much better now. We expanded before the model, which I wish the model was there. It was awesome. It would have saved me so much time and a lot of money. But we went into Scottsdale initially. We thought we'd blow up this market. We went in with our internet, we built our site, did our SEO. We were in top 10 for Google for Scottsdale homes for sale, Scottsdale real estate. Leads were flowing in. I thought we're going to own this. The problem was we had no manager there. I was the manager in Alaska. And we went in November, launched in February. I think we were number 1 at the market center for pendings that month. That was awesome. But my Anchorage team was falling apart. So I shifted my focus, and that was a huge issue. So then I pulled back and brought a manager in for Scottsdale, and it fell apart. So yes, business can be very predictable. What we spent a lot of last year doing is actually separating our hub and our main team from each other, so we can track accountability for the P&L. We can track our ROI on our investments that we're doing for marketing or for lead gen levers, and we're treating that like a separate business now, so we can see how it does, see how it fares compared to the others, and we get a fair assessment of how each team is operating.
Well, and I'm really, really glad that you pointed that out, because as you start to expand, you heard how what he really described as a leader can't be in 2 places at the same time. So how do you lead, even if it's just across the city, when you have more than 1 location? So you have to learn how to lead from afar, even if it's just 1 market center over or 4,000 miles away. And so you've got to figure that piece out, because we don't realize how much of who we are and what we do shows up just because we show up every day. So that's another piece that we had to figure out in terms of the leadership side. So Adelina, tell us how, you know, Ben obviously did it right down the I-5 corridor. Then how did you guys launch that into Austin, Texas?
Well, you know, Ben has a team that's very much prospecting based and marketing enhanced. And I think, you know, we hear Ben talk about, you know, success is survival. And survival is managing your people and managing your money. And so for us, it's whether it's in Austin or any other location that we go to, number 1, we invest in the person that we're launching with. Our expansion partners are really probably the linchpin of what we do. And then we manage our money. So what that means is our business plan for our agents is that they're going to self-generate these leads, right? So they're showing up at 8:30 in the morning. They're doing scripts and dialogues every morning. They are from 9 to 12 calling expireds, old expireds, new expireds, and that kind of sounds like, well, who would call a 2009 expired when, you know, every other agent in Austin has already called them? And we've had massive success with expireds and circle prospecting. So these are things that are provided by our hub that does not cost a lot of money. So what I would say is we went in doing the very basics, low-cost lead generation, and once those agents were doing their part, then we invested in pay-per-click leads and added some of that in.
And I love that. It's kind of like, how many of you ever seen Ben do his pie chart? Right? And once you do these things, then he says he opens up the keys to the treasure chest. So I love that. Okay, so Jason, tell us about how you guys actually implement going into another location, whether it's just across the city or whether it's in another state.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think that the locations that we went into kicking and screaming are probably the stronger locations. And I know that sounds kind of funny, but like there was a lot of locations that look great on paper. Like we looked at San Diego and we said, wow, this average sales price, and we have this model and we can crush it there, and we failed out of San Diego really quickly. And then we said, wow, Denver, that looks great. They're having this boom, and I can make this look good on a spreadsheet too. And we're not in Denver anymore either. So I think it's really important to remember that if you're going somewhere, it's much better if it's organically pulling you than if you're just coming up with this in the lab with a pen and a pad and it just looks good. Like there's really got to be a compelling reason to go. Maybe it's talent-based. Maybe your marketing is spilling over to an area where you don't want to drive every day. Maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe your internet site, your provider opens up new leads in a new territory. There's got to be a real reason other than you think you can make a bunch of money there because the houses are more expensive.
But what I heard you saying is you have to have a good business reason for going there.
Oh yeah,
It's
that
not-
whole lifestyle reason thing. That's how a couple of guys from Arizona end up in San Diego. We're like, this is great. We drink here for 2 weeks out of the year anyway. We can probably make money here. It's just not how that works.
Or I have a cousin and they live in Florida. I love the beach and I've always wanted to go to Florida. Can you imagine Walgreens or Walmart making a decision like that? Of course not. And so we have to start thinking like Gary said, the reason that expansion works today and it didn't work 20 years ago, why do you think that is? He said it was because of us. We had to learn to think like business people before it was going to work. And so that's what Jason's saying, is making business decisions.
Right, and for us, one of those decisions, we made the wrong one for a while, was we would go into a market with one person, maybe two at most. But the problem is that life happens. So and they're the greatest people, and they're still the greatest people. They're just not the greatest people with the greatest company any longer. So, you know, their life happened, they ended up moving on, but ostensibly we were out of business. When someone had a cold, Abrams International closed down, and then it was just unfortunate. So now we really think you need to kind of go wide on this thing as far as the number of people in each location, so that if something happens to someone, something great, they win the lotto. Now they're worth $300 million and decide they don't want to come in from 8:30 to noon and make phone calls, somebody else is there.
Awesome. So David, you expanded because you were actually organically pushed to expand.
Yes.
So share with them what that looked like.
Well, I knew that we were going to expand because we had a lot of our sellers in Hoboken were moving to these 4 areas, and so we were already referring them out. And then we had a builder come to us in another location, and he wanted to hire me, and you know, I obviously wasn't going to go there. So it was kind of, the first expansion team was really, it was kind of urgent. You know, they were doing 30 homes a year, so we opened that expansion team pretty quickly out of necessity, but it really forced us to look back at the hub and see what we needed to fix there, go back, fix all of that. And then when we looked at the way it was operating, we were like, wow, like, you know, let's turn on lead generation in those other markets where we kind of had referrals going out already and see what that looks like. And it was like, for us, it just exploded right away. So, you know, and I agree with what Jason said, to go deep, you know, for us, it's a minimum of 3 people is ideal, because what happens then also, not only, you know, do you have more people if one person leaves, but the accountability and the cross-pollination of culture mindset coaching within the team that starts to happen when you have 3, 4, 5 people. It comes from us, and they start to, it starts to cross-pollinate, and it just makes the team that much stronger.
Sure. And also talk to me about, I know one of your OPs, Al Donahue. So talk to us about, because Al has come to ESO and Al understands expansion, did that make it smoother for you going into those market centers?
Sure. We've talked to a lot of different team leaders and OPs, and that matters. That's the first thing we do before we even talk to any expansion partners is we sit down with the team leader and we show them our vision. We show them what our culture is, what our mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspective is, and we ask them questions to make sure that we're a fit culturally with them and they get it. Because and there's been a couple of times where we could tell that they just didn't, and because of guys like Jason who've been doing this for 5, 6 years, we learned from them. So we know if that's not a fit, then it's going to be very, very difficult. But with Al and with all of the team leaders and OPs of the teams that we have expansions with, they got it, and it was so much easier for us to grow with them. We're very cultural based, we're very mindset based, our team. So it's very important to us that they get that so that they can help us foster that relationship with the agents.
Now, one other thing that I know that all 4 of them do that attracts talent to them, because it isn't a lot more fun when talent is coming to you versus you having to go get talent? Yes. So one thing that each one of them does is they teach in those market centers so that it becomes a win-win opportunity for both the market center and the agents in the market center to be being taught ESO Light or career visioning by these folks. And it's also a win because the team leader will invite agents who aren't with the company yet to come to the classes as well, which then also becomes a pool of candidates for them. So it's a huge win-win opportunity when I see each of these guys teaching in different market centers. So think about that too. If you're a market center sitting here, leadership, that can be a huge win for the market center and for the expansion agents. So let's talk about culture for a minute, because that is probably one of the most under-anticipated keys to success in expansion. So let's each one of you talk about what culture looks like and why it's important in an expansion business.
We have to make sure that anybody who comes into our world is in culture with us, that they understand, that they have grit, that they're willing to work on that mindset. Because if they don't, some of the biggest value that we offer to them is going to go right over their head, and they're not going to see it as value. So we have to make sure way in the beginning that alignment is there. I think it's very important because, look, what happened was one day I was thinking, whoa, I have a lot of people that I'm responsible for. And then something changed, and the next day I was like, whoa, I have the opportunity to grow these people and change their lives. I want to make sure that they get it. So the culture of growth, of giving, my goal a year ago was to take my profit share every month, cut it in half. Half of it goes into one of my son's college fund, the other half goes into my other son's college fund. Now my goal is that, the people in my world's kids' college funds are funded. It's no longer thinking about me, it's thinking about them and how can I grow them and make their world bigger, just like Gary said. I don't have to think about how much money I'm going to make. I have to think about how I can make 10 millionaires this year.
Well, I love that because he's talking about the cash flow quadrant, right? Going from I to we to they to the money does it. When you cross the line and you stop thinking about yourself and just what it's going to do for you and you start thinking about them, that's when you've really crossed over the line and have a real business. Because you're pouring into those people, and like Zig Ziglar says, as long as they get what they want, guess what? Exactly. Okay, so Jason, tell us about culture, what it's looked like, what you've learned from it, changes you've made, and things that culture is one of those things that you can't check off the list as done.
No, we tried that.
How'd that work?
No, we checked it done. We checked it done 3 years ago. We checked it done because we sat down and we made the mission, vision, we made posters, everybody signed it, and then we made hats. So we had it done. It was pretty much done. But then we realized that didn't mean anything to anybody. So here's what we learned about culture. Culture has to live and breathe every single day. And if you want to have culture and you want to have it spread across the United States in different locations, it has to emanate from the hub. So it has to start centralized. And then as soon as it gets to where it's going, it has to be cool enough and exciting enough and impactful enough that it becomes decentralized and they pick it up and run with it. That's exactly what Keller Williams does. Think about that. We all make pilgrimage to Austin, we hear something great, then we come back and we teach it in our market centers, and then everybody runs around talking about it. Isn't that kind of how it happens? That's what you have to start thinking about creating. And here's how you create it. You think about what is the thing that's driving you. Because get this, that like attracts like. You may want to attract amazing people. You're going to attract whoever you are. Let's hope you're amazing. You're just going to get more of you. So odds are, if you know what's driving you and you get it, and you can then go out and explain it to somebody else and get them excited about it so that they want to go out and tell someone else, that's how you grow. And I think you do that every day. That's one of the reasons we do a call every single day. And we end the call the same way. You can ask Dana Benz, who's in the audience, because she has to be on all of them. Thank you for being here. You're the best part of our company. Without you, there is no us. And we thank everybody. And we're a culture of gratitude and hard work. That's who we are.
Love that. You know what you're about. I love that. And you become very clear what you're about when you expand. Because it can't, you aren't showing up every day. It's your culture has to show up without you.
It's going to show up either way. Your company has a culture now. And I promise you, if you expand, each location will have a culture. It's going to be whatever you allow it to be. Whatever you tolerate is what you encourage. So if you do not become purposeful about setting culture daily, then understand, you're advocating that responsibility, and you're saying, hey, person I just met who I take through the KPA and spend 8 hours with, you can decide for me who I am from now on. And I'm not comfortable with that.
So it has to be something, like you said, that it never gets checked off the list. It's something that we're constantly, there is no one way to do it, but here's what we all know. We all know when it doesn't exist, don't we? Exactly. Okay, Adelina, culture.
So I think Keller Williams says that the culture of Keller Williams is productivity. And I think for us, our recruiting conversation from the very day one starts with the mission, vision, and values, right? And so we want people who want to get results and want to be productive and want to be hardworking. And so when you bring people in like that, it's not oil and water, and you don't have the same friction, and you set those expectations on the front end of how our business works and what my expectations are of you and what your expectations should be of me, then you create a culture of transparency. And so what we have in Austin, we have a really cool culture. We have 17 people who are so diverse. I have 23-year-olds and 72-year-olds. I have, male, female, agnostic, Christian, everything in between. And we always say, our power is our diversity, right? Our competitive edge is our diversity. And yet we have this thread called our values, and we all have the same values. So our culture is really our value system that we have. And productivity is really important. Ben talks about, results and love. And you got to get results, and we got to love you.
So I remember Ben telling a story, and I've told it before, and I have Tamara's permission to tell it again. But Tamara, who runs an amazing business for Ben in Washington, one day was texting Ben, and Ben stopped texting her back. And so finally she went to Ben and she goes like, I don't understand. We've been in business together, and you always text me back, and now you no longer text me anymore. And he said, well, Tamara, you're not in my 20% anymore. And she goes, what do you mean I'm not in your 20%? He said, you're not getting results like the other folks are, and so you're just no longer in my 20%. Well, guess what? Tamara did something about that, and that is a part of culture. Productivity is part of culture. When Anderson teaches us that profit is a part of culture, and so it has to be that piece of it. Now I'm going to go to Ryan, my friend here. Now tell us about your implosion here a year or so ago and how you had to completely rebuild.
All right. Hello? Can you hear me? So 2015 was a fun year for me. We had just come off our best year ever, 132 million in production, and I thought I was going to take over the world. I was expanding in other markets. That's when Scottsdale imploded on me. I got to start that one over again. And then my team back home started to implode as well. We went from 19, this is in the spring, we went from 19 producing agents down to 11 in about 2 weeks. And that hurt. That was where all the money was coming from to run our business. And I had signed huge contracts for marketing, different things I knew I was on the hook for. I couldn't just walk away, I couldn't back out. I mean, it could be huge financial ruin for me. And the last 2 or 3 people that left my team, we actually fired. And what I did is I went around to everybody, talked to them one-on-one, kind of interview format, just found out how do you feel about the team, how do you feel about the direction, where do you see yourself going from here. Everyone was negative, went. I didn't care if they were producing or not, they had to go. It was poison to everyone there. Our admin, love them, they do a great job, but they get bonus per file. So they watch this happen, and I can see in their face, like, this is falling apart, this is a big problem. So I just went to them and said, hey, you know, I'm gonna fix this is my problem, it's not yours. You guys shouldn't have to pay for it. I'm gonna fix the business, no matter what happens, you're gonna make the same amount of money this year as you did last year. If I have to bonus you, make up for it, we'll get there. So we fixed everything, we stopped the flood, which is good, and then we rebuilt from there. We got very purposeful about training, purposeful about mentoring, our accountability, our scripting, everything went through the roof. And, you know, generating leads, I know we talk about that a lot, it is very important, it is a basic thing, but everyone can do it because it's so basic. The thing you have to focus on is that conversion piece and the culture piece, because that's what's going to make you profitable and hold you together. And so we got very purposeful about all that stuff. We hired tons of new people, not tons, but like 20, 30 new people.
That's tons.
Tons for a team, for us. So we did all that, and we finished the year at 115 million in sales. So we essentially took new people, most of them never licensed before, ran them through our program we put together, our mentorship, we trained them, we got them in production, and it saved us. And then this last year, we went from there to 145 million plus because of those systems that were put in place. And actually, Paul's here, he's out in the audience there, but we moved him up to our director of growth this year, where he's actually taking on more responsibilities. Now he's working with our expansion teams, helping hold the expansion partners accountable. He's working with them on their scripting, working on them with their training, doing all these things to make sure they're emulating what the hub does and that culture exists down there too. Because we can have someone leading down there and we can love them, think they're great, but if someone's not there, keeping the finger on the pulse all the time, we don't know what direction that culture is going. So it's so important to have someone within your hub, whether it's you or someone else, always keeping a finger on that pulse.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I heard him say is that he had to take a step back. Has anybody ever had to take a step back to go forward? Yeah, and so sometimes what you're going to find is you're going to break systems. And what Gary says is if you're not breaking a system, you're probably not growing. And so when you do break a system, step back, fix it, and then move forward. And like he said, then they had another best year that they've ever had, but they had to stop a second, pull back, and figure out what the heck's going on and what do we need to change. And like he said, take leadership responsibility of that. Because you're running, this is $145 million a year is a big business. It's a huge business. And it has a lot of responsibility that goes with that. So let's talk about, we've talked about accountability, but let's talk about what it actually looks like. What does that look like in each of your worlds? How do you know when someone is accountable or when they're not?
Track everything. That's, if you can't...
What does that mean? Do they see it? Do they get an email? Do they get, what does that look like?
Well, we've built our own system that runs reports so they can see it, our managers can see it, our admin, everyone can see it. We also have boards, very basic, they're whiteboards, we put them in the office. Every week we write down everyone's contacts, we have pending boards. The main thing we track for productivity is pendings. We don't focus on souls. I could care less what we sell. I care what we pen, because that's the action. The sold's gonna come, and admin takes a file from pending and runs it through. So we constantly focus on the activity, and we encourage the activity that results in pendings. Being very transparent within the team is great, because it pushes people at the bottom to do more. No one likes to go see their name on the board with a zero by it. You know, it makes you feel like a kind of a failure. So we use a lot of social accountability. We also created a system.
I like that. They use a lot of social accountability. That means accountability within the team. The team members holding each other accountable.
And that means I don't have to do it all the time. So It was pretty good. But we created a system to assign leads. So if you're on my team and you want leads for the day to contact, one, you have to be in the office, but two, you have accountability partners. They switch every month. We figured that was the best time frame. But every morning by 10 a.m., you have to email your accountability partner and or admin and just say the top 3 things you're doing that day. Number 1 needs to be how many contacts are you making? And then the other 2 can be write an offer, put a lockbox on it, whatever on it. But you also have to put in your results from the previous day so we can see. So you're telling somebody, hey, I'm going to make 15 calls today, and then the next day you go, I only made 7, and I didn't do this or this. And it makes you kind of, after a while, feel bad. You know, like you should be doing better. You're letting this person down. It encourages productivity without me being the authority coming down saying, you suck, you need to make more calls, or you're gone. You know, it's a friendly accountability within the team. The other great thing we found is with the rotation, 1 week is too short. You know, longer than a month is too long. People get familiar with each other, and it's okay to let someone down then. But when we rotate them, the team builds culture. I mean, we've got 38 people in Anchorage, in Alaska, so some are in Wasilla, some are in Anchorage. But to build that culture and get them talking and communicating with each other, whether they are, you know, the 60-year-old lady or the 25-year-old guy that's killing it, they talk to each other and communicate, and it helps build that culture as well.
Thank you. I'm glad you pointed that out. Okay, Adelina, accountability.
So there's one of me in Austin. I have a part-time admin, and I have a lot of agents. So I love what Ryan said. We stole that from my coach, and we do something very similar. There's a movie out there called When the Game Stands Tall, and it's built around having accountability, peer-to-peer accountability, right? That's so much more powerful than me saying, oh my gosh, Kristen, you didn't do your calls again. Now you don't get any leads. Now we both feel bad. This sucks. You know, Ben sucks. Everything sucks, right? So we don't want to do that, right? And so when I'm sitting here and, what's your name? Jason. Jason. Yeah, there we go. You're very forgetful. So Jason, you know, what we do in Monday Morning Power Up, we actually do a weekly thing. Monday Morning Power Up, we take 5 minutes, and Jason, I ask you what your goals are, and you tell me what your goals are, and then Jason, you're going to tell me also why those goals are important to you and what that's going to mean to you. And then it's not Jason reporting his goals, it's me as Jason's partner, and it sounds something like, okay team, so Jason, you know, Jason's goals this week are he's going to get two listings and 1 buyer's rep, and the reason that's important to him is because he really wants to take his family to Disneyland in June. That's something he's been promising his kids, and it's such an honor for me to help Jason reach his goals this week. And that has taken 80% of any accountability that I have to do off my plate. I'm here now, obviously, and there's a whole bunch of them back home. Nobody from our team is here. And they, you know, I said, hey guys, what do we want to do next week? How are we going to have the best week we've ever had without me here? And, you know, I thought I would get some like wide-eyed looks, but instead, you know, they're like, well, give us 5 minutes. And they broke up into 2 groups, and they talked about what their strategy was going to be. And what they ended up deciding is they're going to have 3 teams, and they're going to hold each other accountable, their contacts. They created some kind of competition. I have no idea what it is yet. But the goal is that they're going to have the best week ever, and they're going to go out to eat with me, which is, it'd be cool if it was Ben, but I mean, I guess they'll take me. And as far as expansion partners go, Jolene runs a really cool expansion call for all of us expansion partners, and we report our numbers just like our agents report their numbers. And the reason that's important is not that we can't read each other's numbers. You know, we can all read, that's exciting. And it's important that we look at the... Except Ben, right? Well, we read it too. Ben has people that reads it for him now. And no, I'm just kidding. But it creates awareness around our numbers, right? It creates transparency around our numbers, just the way that we want to lead our agents. And it also creates a mastermind opportunity, just like we talk about with our agents. You know, the reason we talk about, hey, you know, Jason, how many listings did you take last week? It's not because I'm coming down hard on Jason. It's because there's some kind of mastermind opportunity that we now have. So it's very much a transparent culture.
I love that idea. That's a great idea. If you didn't write that down, you should. That's a great idea.
I wrote that down.
Okay, I saw you write that.
Yeah, it's the why part of that that's so good, because with real estate agents, because, the vast majority of real estate agents are check to check. By the way, that's everybody. So the why changes depending on what matters most that month or that week or coming up. Like you start talking to somebody in April and they're worried about paying for summer camp. That might be a lot different than what they were thinking about in February. And for some of us that are going to extend our taxes, we won't even think about that until, October? Accountability on our team, we look at it two different ways, right? So we have my business partner, Brian, is, Mr. Accountability. He makes sure that everybody at the hub is doing what they're supposed to do, that everything is happening the way that it's supposed to be happening. And then we have accountability in the field. Our location leaders are meeting with our agents once a week. Everybody is self-reporting on group chat. If you're not using group chat with your teams, you really should. It creates kind of like a social media for your little group. And what they seem to really like about it is someone will post, just took a listing, and then you can like that comment. And so someone will get 8 or 10 likes really quickly, so we know that everyone's actually looking at it and watching it. And yeah, people love, look at Facebook. Like if you post, a picture of me on your Facebook, you're going to get a lot of likes. It's just it's organic at this point. That's what's going to happen.
Right here, ladies and gentlemen.
It is. You're gonna get likes, and getting likes feels good. That's just what it's all about. So you should have a way for your people to report or self-report, but then have a way for them to get rewarded for doing so. And there's no better way to reward your people than with time. Most people spell love T-I-M-E. If you're not picking up the phone regularly and calling and just saying, hey, just thinking about you, what's going on in your world, they're not gonna really care about you holding them accountable. Unless they believe you care. All of a sudden, you caring doesn't matter.
What is Mike Fleming calls it, an I care call?
Yeah, I'm just calling to check in with you. Mike Fleming here, just want to make sure you're okay. Right, it's just Mike here. Yeah, and he does that, and he does it out of the blue, and you're like, man, this is weird. This guy charges by the minute, and he's calling on a Wednesday, not a Thursday. I don't get it. But he really does that.
He really does. So he lives it. Okay, David, culture. Accountability.
Accountability, yeah. So we same thing. So there's team leaders on each team that are getting the numbers. They're meeting with the agents once a week. Jason, what's your name? Jason told me a while back that you asked me an awesome question that I learned a lot from. You said, "What's your minimum standard?" And I gave you some bullshit. But then you said, "All right, what was the lowest amount of contacts that anybody in your organization made yesterday?" And the answer was 0. And so you said to me, that's your minimum standard. So we had to then go in and really be very, very clear with everybody that this is our minimum standard. Now the team leaders they can raise those standards for certain agents based on what they want. But if an agent's not hitting those minimum standards, then we're having the 4 conversations with them once a week, and there's going to be a high level of accountability. We have a Facebook group, so they're posting on Facebook. We have the boards in the office. They're posting in the office, and we just started leveraging the CTE platform. So we have several layers of that accountability that they just can't get away from it. And if they try to, we're going to find out and have to talk to them.
Yeah, and so I've heard several of you already talk about some fail-forward moments. But if you could go back and start over, knowing what you know now, and Jason, you can only take the mic for like 5 minutes because I know you could go on for a couple hours, right? Okay. So tell us about your fail-forward moments and what you would do different today.
I had the advantage of having all of these people do this I've been at Keller Williams for 1.5 years. I've been expanding for a year. They made all the mistakes for me, and it was such a huge advantage to me all I did before I expanded was listen to them on YouTube talking about all these failures, taking notes, talking to my hub, preparing for it, and so
coming to ESO 4 times.
And coming to ESO and just total immersion. So, my thing right now is trying to prepare for the inevitable failures and put them in my business plan, get excited about them as a platform to spring forward. So that's what we're working on now. We know that we're going to need a director of operations. So that's become my one thing, is to make sure that because that could be the piece that could lead to failure for us. So thank you, all of you guys who've been doing this for so long, for sharing so much. That was huge for me.
Jason.
I think if I could go back and do it all over again, I could just go back to yesterday and probably start again on some things. I think it just comes down to habits. And I think that if I've done anything wrong, it's maybe not being in reality as often as I should be and thinking that I'm a much better time blocker than I am, and maybe saying that I went as hard as I could for my lead generation time, and maybe looking at my numbers and not being as accountable to them as I should. And if everyone in this room is getting the most out of their day, and you're all expert time blockers, and no one is having drunk monkey conversations with themselves, then you're all much further ahead than I am, because I think I fight those battles every day. And Gary sat on stage today and he said, it's easy. Make some habits and then make them non-negotiable in your life. And I've probably set a bunch of them that maybe aren't the best. We all have set them. We just might not realize what they are. Maybe tomorrow some of us make a change.
Good job, Jason. Now that we know your name. So fail forwards, I think there's going to be a lot of fail forwards. I think Gary says that failing forward is something that we do daily, right? And so we shouldn't be slowed down or stopped by failing forward. As far as expansion, I like to think of it as a young marriage, right? And you are growing up together when you get married young. And some of these, unless you have 30 locations, which I don't think any of us have, there's going to be quirks and kinks and all sorts of things as you are expanding. And, there's this fine balance between the dance you do do we have enough revenue? Well, do we have enough production? Do we add this? Do we add that? And we're all scrambling to keep up, right? And that's what it really looks like. And what happens isn't important. That's not the lesson. The lesson really in this is the relationship is in the conversation, right? And what that means is if you're a mega that's out here, and you're thinking about expanding, then the most important thing you should think about is who you're going to be expanding with. If you're an expansion partner, potentially thinking about expanding with a mega, what's important is who you get into business with. And what that looks like is it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be 1,001 fail forwards in your first week. And that's okay, and that's normal, because the only thing that we're concerned with is, are we in business with the right person? Are we solution-based? Are we looking for the win-win? And are we looking for progress?
And the only thing I would add to that is that the relationship also with the mega or the expansion agent has then with the market center and the team leader, OP. Critical, critical, critical. And making sure that you are asking those same questions to make sure that you have created a win-win opportunity for both the market center and for the expansion agent and the agents in the market center. I mean, that relationship, if you look behind the curtain at the relationships up here and who we're in business with in a lot of locations, like why in the heck would Ryan Tollison go to Birmingham flipping Alabama? There's one reason, and her name's Jennifer Toomer, and it's a relationship. And so when you look at why we're in different market centers, behind the curtain is always a relationship. It's a relationship with an OP, it's a relationship with the team leader, and those relationships matter. So she's right. You can fail forward as long as you're not failing in the relationship. Mr. Ryan, yes.
Okay. Well, talking of failures, I mentioned my bigger one earlier, and I've made tons. The one thing, if I could go back, knowing what I know today, if I go back to when I first started my team, actually even before that, but when I started a team, if I'd been purposeful and thought about it like a business with the end in mind versus I was a solo agent, I wanted to leverage myself, make the same money, and not work weekends. That was my goal. That's where my team originated from. It grew into something bigger without a purpose. There was no structure. I went really wide. I didn't go deep. That's why it imploded over and over again. When I went to expand, it showed me all my faults, all my flaws. And if I had a true business, not just me being self-employed and kind of playing with people and making money outside, I could have been so much further ahead already. But just, with ESO program, all the systems out there, everything you look at, they get contracts, everything you look at saves you so much time and money. I spent so much money on our team contract when I generated that. When I generate an expansion contract, I'm like, this is a nightmare. Why would I ever do that? And it's all figured out now, or a lot of it's figured out now.
So what he's talking about is we have that template for you with our program. And what Ryan is also talking about is that all of them, remember what Gary said on stage, that if you want to become the master of it, you do what? You teach it, exactly. And so Ryan's taught ESO with me in Alaska. Jason's taught ESO with me in Michigan. Adelina and David have both taught ESO lights in their market centers. And so going out and teaching this is a way to master it. If you want to become a certified instructor, stop by our booth, see Allison, Tegan, or myself, and become a certified instructor for the ESO light class. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Okay, it's a 4-hour course. It is not meant to replace ESO, but it is meant for you to be able to teach it, instruct it at the Market Center, and as a funnel to the 2-day course. So it's also, David, how many people actually contacted you after you taught ESO Light the last time just to start a conversation about maybe getting in business together?
So after lunch, we were going to do just kind of a little group meeting for the people who were interested, and it was a big group. Yeah, it was I've probably talked to 15 people there was 35 in the room.
So if you have 15 people to talk to, is it likely that you'll probably find a couple that might work?
We did.
Yeah. And then now they're funneling it to having an ESO class there in New Jersey, which is in a couple of weeks. That is filling up fast because he's teaching the ESO Light class in advance. So we have 15-20 minutes left. We take as many questions as you have. Yes, sir, your question, you're gonna have to be loud. And I'll repeat it, or I'll have Allison come to you.
Thank you, Allison. So my name is Austin Panelist, and I'm from Northville, Michigan. I'm a team leader. And so I really appreciate you guys speaking up on all this. And there's just been a lot of invaluable information, so we really appreciate that. My primary question is more back to the basics. Like, how do you decide to go into Market Center? How do you find that key hire? What are your recruiting tactics? What are those kind of things? And Jason, you talked a little bit about that spillover effect, but how do you purposefully figure out where you want to be in business?
How do I purposefully figure out where I want to be in business or who I want to be in business with? Right, well, I get you. Well, you're a team leader, so you're probably asking, like, how do I pick the market center I'm going into? Is that more the question? Yeah, well, I think that's an interesting question. And as more and more teams are expanding, I think the answers are evolving and changing. Because what you don't want to see necessarily is the market center being 100% responsible for finding the agents that end up on the teams, right? Because then it becomes less symbiotic and more you're just supplying everything. I really believe that recruiting has to be twofold. Needless to say, in order to have a solid team, we'd like to get at-bats from the team leader. We'd like to meet agents that are coming in. And when you look, statistically speaking, most new agents really should be on a real estate team. It might not be the most popular view, but they certainly should be if they want to make a lot of money. Because we know the number of realtors that make more than $100,000, only 10% of them, and half of those are on real estate teams. So the market center has to provide at-bats. Then I think the teams also have to be recruiting and bringing people into their organization. And I think a lot of that comes from teaching. And keep in mind that every time Gary Keller teaches, all he's doing is recruiting. And that's all he's done from the day that he started Keller Williams. So if you're going to offer up your market center as the bully pulpit to let someone come in and teach, understand that there's going to be someone in the audience that they're going to appeal to, and attraction is bound to happen.
And also know that we spend probably an hour and a half at ESO on that one question. And what are the demographics? What are the statistics? How do you go find them? When we go into a city, we go there to stay. And so if tomorrow you win the lottery, we're still going to be there. So we're purposeful about what cities we will and won't go into based on some criteria. And so we talk for at least an hour and a half at ESO on what would that criteria look like? Why does it matter? Why should it matter to you? And does that team leader have that information for you to make a good business decision? Because this is all about business. This is not about emotional conversations. These are business conversations about demographics, statistics, and why would you want to have a business in that location. So I just want you to know that the 2-day full course is all around Gary's 13-point business snapshot of how he built this company. And we teach you how to go out and build a business the exact same way, using the same model that he did to build this company.
Do you do splits and compensation structures with the new entity different than you do the one at your hub? Everything is the same?
But what I will tell you is originally we did, and we learned that that's not going to work. So, and also, just so you know, we talk about compensation the second morning in detail and go through an Excel worksheet on how do you fill in the assumptions tab on business decisions, and what does that look like for you in terms of profitability. And we teach you how to do it with your buyer specialist and your listing specialist, whether you ever expand or not. So I want you to know this class may be called Expansion Systems Orientation, but it is a business class to teach you how to be a good business person.
Thank you again for being here. I've heard each of you share some component of going wide when you're going into a new marketplace, just for a lot of various reasons that make sense. So what would be some of the key or the minimum hires or roles perhaps on those teams when you're expanding beyond just the individual expansion part? Maybe you've identified the key talent. What's the minimum to surround them by to be successful?
So his question is, when you go into a location, what does that depth look like? Because Gary says, and we're using two different concepts, and we're using wide when it means deep, and we're using deep when it means wide. So let me tell you what we mean. In May, Gary sat us all down and he said, you all need to rethink this, and you need to go deeper into a location versus wide all the way across the United States. So what he was trying to help us understand is that someone could win the lottery tomorrow. And if you only have one person there, guess what? You've got a job back. And so it makes sense, like Jason said, to want to be more than one person deep. And then if you have more than one, then what does that leadership look like in those, is there, well, think of it like this. You can answer your own question. On a 7th level team, when you have more than one buyer specialist, when you have 5 or 6, and you need someone to lead those buyer specialists, what do? You promote one of them to the lead buyer specialist, right? And how do they get compensated? They get an override, right? How do you think we do it with expansion? The exact same way. There's a question over here and one over here. Take 2 more questions.
Bernie Christian, Fort Worth Market Center. Kristen, I noticed you guys haven't said anything, any mention about ISA, OSA, and how you guys are using those, if you are at all.
We all are, and it can look a little bit different. I think initially let me just let each one of them say, because I could explain each of their models. Like, Ben, you earn the right to have an ISA. So everybody's a little bit different, but we're all heavily prospecting based, and we do expect the expansion partners to lead generate, but all of us also have back-end people, ISAs and OSAs, doing the same thing. So maybe if you want to take it first, Adelina, and tell them, or Ryan.
Not Adelina here. We actually don't use ISAs currently. We used to. We had that model. Our problem was every time we bring an ISA in, if they were good, they wanted to be an agent, because they'd do a handoff to an agent and the deal wouldn't come together. So I don't know if we just messed up that marriage between the two. But they always wanted to move up to an agent, or if they were an agent and they wanted to move down to an ISA, we were making them make the calls. They usually sucked at the calls, and so they'd make a horrible ISA. They couldn't do the job. We have a contract for it, we have a position for it, we have a model for it, but for us, it hasn't been great.
In Bellingham at our hub, we have an incredible ISA team, and in Austin, we actually didn't have an ISA until we earned the right to have an ISA. It was about 6 months into having the business, so we actually had to have production first. So you evolve some of that as you open up new locations. what I like to tell my agents is, guys, we have in Austin the best ISA team, and it's you guys. And if you want to talk about shift-proofing your business, teach your agents how to lead generate themselves, have them do $150 a day, and they're not going to be asking for ISA, OSA appointments all the time. They want to earn their 50%. And then everything else is supplemental, and it's awesome, and we appreciate it, but we're not building the business on an ISA model.
We have ISAs in our hub in Scottsdale. We break them into two categories. We have ISAs that are looking for new business and then following up with the people they're talking to, and then a group of people that only follow up with people in our database. We still believe in it. You know, one of the challenges with expansion is you're decentralizing your leadership, meaning that you can have the best accountability in the world, but there's no substitute for when Brian can walk down the hall and find out who to hug and who to hit really quickly. So we like keeping that there. The reality of it is the phone is still the fastest way to pivot when it comes to lead generation, and it's still the cheapest way to reach the highest number of people in the fastest amount of time.
Yes, we have ISAs, so we have a lead ISA, and he is in charge of hiring the other ISAs, training them, managing them. He gets an override just like a team leader would on a team. And same thing, you know, the agents first have to start lead generating. So 75% of their business is going to come from their own lead generation, and 25% is going to come from the ISAs. And we're monitoring that. So if we start to see on a month that, you know, their business was 80% from ISA, then we're going to have another conversation with them and figure out what we need to fix in there, whether it's their presentations or if we already know they're hitting their numbers, or we would have had that conversation already. So the ISAs help us figure out what skills we have to work on with the agents on their own lead generation.
I have one more question.
My name is Joseph. I'm the Care Network. I just want to ask, what's the one thing that you guys do that makes you stand out and be unique, so that you can leave a lasting impression on your prospects?
Well, I think you said, what is the one thing that we do that's unique?
Makes you unique.
That makes us unique to leave a, so it sounds like a listing appointment, and you just asked me, what do I do differently? So that we could leave a lasting impression on all of you guys. Well, I think, like you said earlier, we're not doing anything too sexy. We're following the model. The one thing that, and I don't know that this is unique, because everything that we're learning has been done before us. But we are very, very strong on mindset training, on making sure that people understand that that is the most important thing. So that comes for us, that is the number one thing that we're constantly working on. And we have 4 levels of coaches in our company. And throughout those different levels of coaching, they're getting all of that strong mindset training.
Honesty for us, we're going to be amazingly transparent. We're going to be the most honest guys in the room as often as we can. We're really clear about when we're losing. We celebrate hard when we're winning. And I think it's similar with Ben. When he says results and love, I mean, what is he saying? He's saying we're all going to make a bunch of money, and then we're going to do the right thing once it happens. And I think you'll see that in most big businesses that succeed. That better be somewhere in the culture.
I think what doesn't make us any better. It makes us a little bit different. Our value is our agents. And what Gary Keller says is, you know, thinking big isn't enough, right? It's executing big, right? So if you are just thinking big in your head and you never get into execution mode, you're having a really nice life in your head, right? And so for us and for me, when we're going out and we are recruiting new agents, you know, it's all about, hey, we are hiring you because you're going to get results and because you're awesome. And what we know is that we're going to hold the activities accountable every day, because we know that consistency is something that compounds, and so does inconsistency. And inconsistency then builds mediocrity, and we're not looking to be mediocre. And so nothing we do is sexy. It's just about executing what we have already said we were going to do.
We kind of keep to the basics, you know, and we just do a lot. We work really hard. We have really strong integrity on our team. We will walk away from a transaction. We will spend money and lose money if we have to, if it's the right thing to do. And we'll set a standard for our industry and whatever market we're in. Other agents sometimes don't like it, but we play by the rules. We stay on the right side of the line. We just make sure that we're going to have a long-lasting business and a strong reputation with everyone.
The one thing that I hope you've heard all of them say today is that, John Maxwell says there's one difference between being wildly average and wildly successful, and that's execution. So that's getting up and doing every day what nobody else wants to do, which is what? Lead generate. So what I hope you heard all of them say here today is that the simpler you can keep it, the higher the degree of execution. So if you want your folks executing at a high level, what we've all learned is we've had to simplify, simplify, simplify. If you make it complex, they get paralyzed and nothing happens. So we're thrilled that you came to our breakout as the first breakout, and on behalf of the panelists and Gary and Diana and myself, thank you so much and have a great family reunion.